So this video is for international trade and macroeconomics, and we're going to be looking at what may cause a rise or a fall in an exchange rate. So to start off with, what do we mean by a rise in an exchange rate? Well, what we mean is a currency appreciation, and that is the increase in the value of one currency relative to another. So what can cause that? Well, we tend to see it with an increase in the demand for that currency. Now, if it's not a rise in an exchange rate, then what it'll be is a fall in the exchange rate, and in other words, a depreciation. So a fall in the exchange rate is known as depreciation in the exchange rate, and it means the currency is worth less compared to other countries. And what can cause that? Well, it can be less demand for the currency, or it could be an increase in supply of that currency. And where is that supply going? That supply could be going to the forex market in order to demand other currencies. So in order to understand what factors could influence the rise or fall in an exchange rate in a free floating system, we're going to be using an acronym which is RIFs. So we're going to be looking at what each one of those means and how it could cause an appreciation or a depreciation of a currency. So to start us off with, the R stands for relative interest rates. So when we're considering relative interest rates, what we are looking at is how interest rates are changing relative to the interest rates of other countries. So for example, if we see interest rates rising in a different country with a different currency, then what we may see is an appreciation of that currency. So why is that? Well, the reason for that is hot money. Now, hot money refers to funds that are controlled by investors who actively seek short-term returns. So these investors scan the markets for short-term high interest rate investment opportunities. So if they can see a country with high rates or high interest rates, then they're going to get a greater return on, for example, those funds. Now, in order for them to, for example, save in those financial institutes, they must exchange their original currency with this new currency. And now the demand for that currency will appreciate and cause a rise in the exchange rate. Now the I stands for inflation. So when we're considering inflation, what we need to think about is, for example, the purchasing power parity and how much your currency goes in that of another country. Now, if another country is experiencing inflation, then your currency in nominal terms will be undervalued, and that will reduce the attractiveness of buying those goods from abroad. So let's imagine that it's your country that's experienced inflation. Now, your exports will be less attractive, and because they're less attractive, you're going to see less demand for them. And because other countries, if they are going to buy your exports, they must first buy the currency in order to buy those goods, they will no longer be demanding that currency. So a fall in the demand will cause a depreciation of that currency due to less exports. Now the F stands for foreign direct investment, FDI. Now if we have a country which is seen to be attractive for FDI. So for example, a country where multinational corporations are deciding to buy factors of production within that country, so it could be capital, then in order to buy those factors of production, what they must do first is they must buy the currency in order to, for example, buy the capital. And again, what that will do, if there's high levels of FDI flowing into the country, then that will appreciate that currency. Now the T stands for trade accounts. And what we mean by trade accounts is we're looking at those exports and imports and those net exports. Now if a country sees a rise in their net exports, then that suggests that number one, it might be because of a fall in imports, and therefore if there's a fall in imports, then they will not be supplying their currency as much to buy those goods. Or it could be because it's a rise in exports. And if it's a rise in exports, then they're going to see a greater demand for their currency, which causes that appreciation. The final one is speculation. Now, when we're considering speculation, we're thinking about traders and we're thinking about how they are acting on information and forecasts. So, for example, if there is positive and negative speculation, then that is going to impact the demand and the supply of the currency. If there's positive speculation, then they'll want to demand the currency before it rises in value in order to profit from that transaction. If there's negative speculation, they'll want to supply that currency before it drops in value.